Behind the valor and camaraderie of Easy Company as immortalized in Band of Brothers lies a deeply personal and often overlooked story of Carwood Lipton, a man whose bravery and leadership carried his comrades through some of World War II's darkest moments. Lipton wasn't just a soldier, he was the beating heart of his unit, a figure of unwavering strength in times of chaos. Yet, as the guns fell silent and the world celebrated victory, Lipton's personal battle had only just begun. From the grueling hardships of war to the challenges of civilian life and a tragic ending that casts a shadow over his incredible legacy, his story is both inspiring and heartbreaking. What led this remarkable man, admired by all who knew him, to face such a somber conclusion? Join us as we delve into the untold chapters of Carwood Lipton's life, exploring the heroism, resilience, and quiet struggles of a true legend of Easy Company. Carwood Lipton's story is one of resilience, bravery, and unwavering duty to his country. It unfolds against the tumultuous backdrop of World War II, a period when paratroopers were pioneering new military tactics that demanded extraordinary courage and rigorous training. He would ultimately stand out among the men of Easy Company, later immortalized by the series Band of Brothers. Yet his legacy extends well beyond dramatized television. It touches upon the very real consequences of war, the triumphs, camaraderie, heartbreak, and lasting scars that veterans so often carry long after the guns fall silent. Born on January 30th, 1920, in Huntington, West Virginia, Clifford Carwood Lipton would be reshaped by tragedy at a tender age. When he was only 10, his father died in a car accident, an event that not only robbed him of paternal guidance, but left his mother with life-altering injuries, paralyzing her and rendering her unable to work. In a family already facing serious financial strain, the responsibility for taking care of his mother and any younger siblings quickly fell on young Carwood's shoulders. This was an era, shortly after the onset of the Great Depression, when poverty was widespread and government assistance was limited or difficult to access. It is easy to imagine the emotional weight on his shoulders as he navigated the difficulties of growing up without a father's presence in a time and place where economic hardship was already widespread. Many young men, similarly forced into early adulthood, might have been overwhelmed. Carwood, however, found in adversity a motivation to persevere. With a fierce determination to break free from hardship, he enrolled in Marshall University in Huntington. The hope of acquiring a formal education suggested he might carve out a more secure future for himself and his family. Yet after only 1 year, Carwood's finances ran dry. The reality of having to care for his mother while juggling tuition and living expenses left him with no choice but to leave his studies. To help keep his family afloat, he took a position in an arms production plant. This was not glamorous work, but it served as a testament to his steadfast resolve, a man who, from a young age, was ready to step up when the situation demanded it. The exact reasons for why he chose the paratroopers can be partially deduced from the era's spirit of adventure and duty. But one decisive factor was an article in Life magazine that captured his imagination. The piece detailed the harrowing, exacting training required for America's newly formed paratrooper units. Young men who volunteered to jump from airplanes into the heart of battle had to exhibit extraordinary physical and psychological fortitude. Despite the intimidation factor, or perhaps because of it, Carwood felt an immediate pull. While so many others might have felt daunted by the thought of diving into combat from a plane, he signed on without hesitation, committed to proving to himself that he could face down any trial that came his way. After going through a demanding selection process, he joined the 101st Airborne Division, a unit that would earn the moniker Screaming Eagles. The 101st was not formed simply to be another infantry division. It was designed to be a specialized airborne force, employing new tactics that involved dropping soldiers behind enemy lines. Such a concept was both revolutionary and incredibly dangerous. Many prospective paratroopers washed out during training, discouraged by injuries or discouraged by the punishing physicality required. Yet Carwood kept going. In 1942, he reported to Fort Thomas, Kentucky, focusing all his energy on meeting the Army's grueling standards. That same year, the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, part of the 101st, initiated training at Camp Toccoa, Georgia, one of the formative sites for America's first large-scale experiments in airborne warfare. Though Lipton's path did not identically mirror every day's routine at Toccoa, it reflected that same spirit of relentless perseverance. The mountains, rope courses, forced marches, and repeated jumps from training towers molded novices into disciplined paratroopers. Unlike conventional infantry, these men were required to develop not just marksmanship and tactical awareness, but also a fearless approach to descending from the skies into a war zone. Lipton's early experiences in the Army quickly highlighted his leadership potential. One of the earliest signs of his promise appeared when the existing first sergeant of Easy Company, James Punchy Dooley, was promoted to an officer position. Lipton's unwavering drive, combined with an unusual skill for boosting morale, made him the natural choice to fill that vacancy. Indeed, his colleagues and superior officers noticed how thoroughly he embodied the necessary dualities. On one hand, he maintained discipline in the ranks. On the other, he always knew when men needed a pat on the back or a joke to lighten the atmosphere. This talent would become crucial in some of the war's most harrowing battles, where morale was the difference between success and overwhelming despair. Among Lipton's roles was that of a jump master, a responsibility that demanded precise oversight of soldiers exiting the aircraft and parachuting into the field. Here, he gained the nickname "the man" for his keen attention to detail and his calm composure under pressure. In that era, every jump involved multiple potential points of failure: faulty parachutes, incorrectly loaded gear, missed drop zones. Lipton's watchfulness ensured his men had the best possible chance of landing safely, no small feat when bullets might be whistling through the air the moment they approached enemy territory. His dedication to the group extended far beyond these mechanical tasks, however. He had a genuine desire to see every man in Easy Company come out alive. That was never guaranteed in an environment where the 101st Airborne was often inserted into the most critical sectors of battle. One of the earliest major operations for Lipton and Easy Company was the Normandy invasion on D-Day, June 6, 1944. Under the command of General Maxwell Taylor, the 101st Airborne dropped behind enemy lines in the pre-dawn hours. Their assignment included securing causeways and cutting off German reinforcements that might prevent Allied forces landing on Utah Beach. The night was filled with chaos, anti-aircraft fire, unlit drop zones, swirling winds that scattered the paratroopers, and thick hedgerows that made regrouping nearly impossible. Lipton himself was struck by shrapnel from a self-propelled 105 millimeter howitzer. The wound inflicted excruciating pain, but he refused to leave the field. Medics administered first aid, cleaning and dressing the wound so he could keep moving. This single-minded refusal to succumb to the pain symbolized Lipton's spirit, relentless, loyal, and determined to be at the center of the action where his men needed him most. The Normandy campaign offered no respite. Within hours of landing, Lipton and Easy Company faced the mission of destroying 4 German 105 millimeter howitzers, stationed at a place called Bravery Manor. Those guns rained fire upon Utah Beach, threatening Allied landing operations. In one of the legendary small unit actions of the war, Easy Company orchestrated a flanking maneuver that neutralized each enemy position. Lipton took the bold step of climbing a tree to secure a better vantage point. Firing with steady precision, he picked off German soldiers, providing covering fire that allowed his comrades to push forward. This courageous act earned him the Bronze Star, a distinction given for heroism. The success at Bravery Manor remains a textbook example of how a small group of well-trained, determined troops can overwhelm a superior defensive line. Combat in the hedgerows of Normandy was but a prelude to what came next. The Allies turned their sights on Carentan, a strategic town linking Utah and Omaha beaches. Here, Easy Company pushed into close quarters, fighting against stiff German resistance, and paratroopers had to sweep through streets and farmyards under sniper fire. At one point, Lipton came under the direct gaze of a German marksman, sustaining wounds to his groin and face. Despite bleeding profusely and being in clear danger, he stood strong, helping to hold the line until the threat was neutralized. This unflinching courage won him the Purple Heart, emblematic of the wounds endured in service. It was also in Carentan that Lieutenant Colonel Robert George Cole earned the Medal of Honor for the leadership he demonstrated in the thick of these brutal engagements. Lipton's injuries, while serious, never completely sidelined him. In fact, they seemed only to deepen his resolve to ensure his fellow soldiers had someone looking out for them. Over in the Netherlands, Operation Market Garden, arguably one of the more ambitious and controversial Allied operations, brought Lipton and Easy Company to Eindhoven in September 1944. Although the plan's overall goal was to secure a series of bridges leading into Germany, each city and crossing demanded focus. Lipton distinguished himself once again by scouting roads and bridges, ensuring his men could traverse these critical points without exposing themselves to immediate ambushes. When a squad mate was grievously injured by a German grenade, Lipton was in the thick of it. His capacity to remain calm under sudden violent circumstances allowed him to orchestrate assistance and help hold the unit together. In the midst of these large campaigns, Easy Company also embarked on smaller, stealthier missions that showcased the paratroopers' adaptability. One such mission, codenamed Operation Pegasus, required crossing the lower Rhine in small boats to rescue around 140 British paratroopers trapped behind enemy lines. Though overshadowed by more famous battles, these rescue operations were no less essential. Lipton collaborated closely with First Lieutenant Frederick Moose Haliger, offering moral support and an extra pair of watchful eyes to guarantee success. By the operation's end, British forces that might otherwise have been captured or killed were led to safety. Lipton's function in that success was lauded, further increasing the respect he commanded from both peers and officers. When the Battle of the Bulge swept across the Ardennes in December 1944, Easy Company found itself encircled in Bastogne. The frigid conditions, feet constantly soaking in melted snow, barely any winter gear, limited medical supplies, were as perilous as the shells raining down. Morale might have imploded if not for men like Lipton. His ability to crack a smile, boost determination, and keep men's spirits afloat in sub-zero temperatures was invaluable. More than ever, the intangible element of leadership, trust, empathy, camaraderie, mattered as much as any tactic or weapon. In an assault near Foy, during which the men confronted entrenched German positions and the lingering terror of artillery barrages, Lipton again stepped up. He showcased calm decisiveness on the radio, coordinating squads scattered through the snow-covered forests. His performance garnered him a promotion to second lieutenant, underscoring the Army's recognition of how indispensable his leadership truly was in life-threatening conditions. By war's end in 1945, Carwood Lipton stood among those paratroopers who were part of the siege of Berchtesgaden, Adolf Hitler's mountain retreat in the Bavarian Alps. For many Americans, that final push into the heart of Nazi Germany's symbolic hideaway served as confirmation that the Third Reich was collapsing. With Germany's surrender, the 101st Airborne was eventually disbanded, and Lipton returned home. Though his days of leaping from airplanes over foreign territory had ended, the Army kept him on standby throughout the Korean War, though he would never be called upon to serve overseas in that conflict. Reintegrating into civilian life can be as daunting for returning service members as any enemy engagement. Lipton's first step was to finish his education. Returning to Marshall University, he completed 3 more years to earn his engineering degree. This crucial achievement paved the way for him to join Owens, Illinois Incorporated, a large manufacturer known for its glass products and plastic packaging. Lipton's knack for leadership swiftly propelled him upward in the company's hierarchy. By 1952, he was the chief operator, guiding teams to improve performance and streamlined operations. Years later, in 1966, he and his wife relocated to Bridgeton, New Jersey, where he became an administrative manager. That role would be far from the last rung of his corporate climb. In 1971, the company transferred him to London, assigning him oversight of 8 distinct glass manufacturing facilities across England and Scotland, a testament to his expertise in organizational leadership. During that era, industrial management was becoming increasingly globalized. Lipton's capacity for decision-making under pressure, likely honed from his time in war zones, made him well-suited to navigate the logistical and cultural challenges of running plants in different countries. After several successful years in the UK, he returned stateside and settled in Toledo, Ohio, in 1982 to serve as Director of International Development. He held that position until retiring a year later. While corporate achievements represent one side of Lipton's post-war life, it is also true that the mental scars from combat tend not to vanish. Like so many of his contemporaries who had seen and participated in the horrors of war, Lipton might well have wrestled with memories of lost friends, harrowing brushes with death, and haunting recollections of seeing bombs fall on towns filled with civilians. The transcript references that, despite his outward success, he struggled with the transition back to civilian life. Veterans of World War II often confronted an internal battle that their families sometimes only partially understood. Some found outlets in community service, some turned to church or volunteer organizations, while others guarded their memories and nightmares quietly. Lipton's trajectory in corporate America, although impressive, suggests an energetic personality that may also have been seeking through work a way to channel his restlessness, a phenomenon not uncommon among people returning from the front. On December 16, 2001, Carwood Lipton passed away in Southern Pines, North Carolina, from pulmonary fibrosis. At that time, many of the men who served with him had either passed away themselves or were in advanced age. The Band of Brothers miniseries had debuted earlier that same year, bringing an outpouring of public attention to Easy Company's experiences. One can only imagine how Lipton felt observing that surge of new interest in stories that had been part of his private life for so long. Likely, the renewed interest offered him a chance to reconnect with old comrades and share recollections that had for decades seemed relevant only among a small circle of fellow veterans. His death represented a deep loss for those who knew him personally and for the surviving members of Easy Company, who recognized him as a pillar of moral support and exemplary leadership. In looking back on his story, one sees not just a paratrooper, but a figure shaped by an era of global conflict, economic depression, and rapidly evolving military strategy. The war necessitated that men like Lipton learn to jump from airplanes under gunfire, assault heavily fortified positions, and keep their composure under the most horrific conditions imaginable. His courage in Normandy, Carentan, Eindhoven, Bastogne, Berchtesgaden, and numerous lesser-known operations exemplified the determined spirit of the 101st Airborne. In a matter of a few years, Carwood Lipton went from a college dropout with few prospects to a widely admired combat leader, forging friendships in foxholes and from airplane doors that would last a lifetime. It's important to note how essential morale building can be in such circumstances. War is not just about weaponry and tactics. It is also a contest of emotional endurance. Lipton understood that men on the line need reassurance, especially in bleak moments when artillery shells pound the ground and the temperature drops far below freezing. According to the accounts of fellow soldiers, he went out of his way to lighten the mood and keep men's hopes intact, occasionally telling stories or jokes, always checking in on someone who looked anxious. In that way, he mirrored the best qualities of beloved officers and non-commissioned officers, NCOs, across the armed forces. Another angle to Lipton's experience is how the Allies' airborne operations changed the face of warfare. Before World War II, the idea of dropping large numbers of infantry from planes into hostile territory was revolutionary. Even the concept of an airborne division was quite new. Men like Lipton, who embraced that challenge, effectively laid the blueprint for the many airborne operations that have followed in subsequent conflicts, from the early days of the Vietnam War, where helicopter insertions became common, to even modern special operations missions that rely on infiltration by parachute. His example underscores the need for rigorous training, thorough planning, and the intangible but critical factor of leadership that fosters unity under dire pressure. When the war concluded, Lipton found himself at a crossroads many veterans faced. How best to employ the leadership skills honed on the battlefield in a civilian environment. His successful transition into corporate roles, rising to positions that required managing people across different plants and even in different countries, should be regarded as an extension of his proven ability to excel in dynamic high-stakes situations. It is also worth acknowledging that behind each promotion, Lipton carried the ghosts of the war's savage realities, the responsibility of having been entrusted with men's lives during intense firefights, and the memories of those who did not survive. For many veterans, the corporate world was a landscape so different from Bastogne's frozen forest that it was difficult to fully express or reconcile their experiences. The fact that Lipton thrived in that environment illustrates both his resilience and his capacity to adapt. His death in 2001 coincided heartbreakingly with a rekindling of public interest in Easy Company, courtesy of the historical works by Stephen Ambrose and the subsequent HBO dramatization spearheaded by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. The show, Band of Brothers, introduced a new generation to the genuine feats and sacrifices made by Lipton and the men he served with. Although the dramatization necessarily condensed or rearranged certain events, it still captured the essence of the bond these men formed in intense, life-threatening situations. One can suspect that seeing these stories told on such a grand stage may have brought Lipton pride, tinged perhaps with a sense of sorrow for the close friends he had lost decades earlier. In reflecting on Lipton's background, his service, and his life after the war, it is also critical to note how the broader social environment changed around him. When he was a child, West Virginia was grappling with the remnants of the Great Depression, with many families depending on precarious jobs in coal mining or manufacturing. By the time he passed away, the United States had undergone far-reaching transformations: post-war economic booms, civil rights movements, changes in social values, and the rise of a globalized economy. In some respects, Lipton's life mirrored the dramatic shift of America's place in the world, from an isolationist nation haunted by the Depression to a superpower at the helm of large-scale military and business enterprises. The same qualities that saw him through adversity, discipline, leadership, and empathy were presumably the bedrock of his success. Yet the man behind the medals and promotions was also a husband who relocated for his job, living in places as diverse as Bridgeton, New Jersey, London, England, and Toledo, Ohio. He was a manager who took on projects at glass factories. He was a father figure to many younger staff, just as he had been to fresh-faced paratroopers decades earlier. He was, above all, an individual shaped by the greatest conflict of the 20th century, who resolved never to forget those lessons learned in blood and sweat. These lessons included the fragility of life, the unpredictability of war, and the unbreakable camaraderie that forms when people go through extreme hardship together. For historians and enthusiasts of World War II, Lipton's story offers a microcosm of the paratrooper experience, a vantage point on how carefully orchestrated airborne missions, though incredibly hazardous, had a strategic value that contributed significantly to the Allied victory. Reflecting on Lipton's role in missions like the capture of Carentan or the Bricourt Manor assault illuminates why the 101st Airborne achieved near-legendary status. By achieving objectives thought too difficult for regular infantry, paratrooper outfits proved indispensable in rapidly changing battle scenarios that characterized the war's Western Front. Even post-war, Lipton's continuing commitment to his career parallels the stories of countless other veterans who, rather than simply celebrating the war's end and slipping into complacency, went on to transform the peacetime industries of the United States. They infused their workplaces with traits they learned through military discipline, punctuality, cooperation, and resourcefulness. Lipton's time in high-level management also underscores the synergy that can happen when the lessons of war, careful planning, respect for hierarchy balanced with regard for each individual's potential, and a willingness to adapt to unforeseen complications get transposed into corporate strategy. Though his untimely death came from a respiratory illness, pulmonary fibrosis, the moral arc of Carwood Lipton's life continues to resonate. His memory stands as a beacon of the many challenges endured by veterans who returned to an America that, for better or worse, would never understand war as intimately as the soldiers who fought it. He, alongside the men of Easy Company, exemplified how ordinary individuals, when thoroughly trained and driven by belief in each other, can accomplish superhuman feats in the face of an enemy. Without such perseverance, the outcome of entire battles might well have changed, altering the course of history itself. The final words about his passing can serve as a salute to one who recognized that valor in combat must be matched by compassion in everyday life. Lipton extended encouragement, he gave direction, and he made sure no man felt abandoned in the darkest hours. His was the spirit that fosters unity in a platoon pinned down by gunfire. It was also the spirit that soared in business roles that demanded cross-country coordination, forging effective teams in an era predating instant digital communication. So, when we remember Carwood Lipton, we are honoring not only the heroic legacy of a soldier in one of World War II's premier units, but the timeless qualities of dedication, empathy, and ethical leadership that transcend any battlefield. Thus, while he is fondly commemorated as one of Easy Company's finest, it is equally important to honor him as a human being whose life journey moved from a fatherless boy in West Virginia to a corporate executive traveling between continents. He always returned to the core principle that had defined him since childhood, the belief that one must do whatever is necessary to help others when they are in need. Even after the war ended, that principle guided him in civilian endeavors, whether as a mentor to new employees or as a supportive colleague in overseas factories far removed from his Appalachian origins. And so we bid farewell to Carwood Lipton, acknowledging him as not only a gallant figure of the 101st Airborne's history, but also as a figure whose story epitomizes endurance, empathy, and quiet determination. His memory deepens our comprehension of what war demands from the human spirit, and how a person can harness even the most harrowing experiences to lead, protect, and inspire in every sphere of life. Today, his tale resonates across the generations, encouraging us to remember that legends are often born from ordinary men who rise to meet extraordinary challenges and never lose sight of the camaraderie that binds them together. Rest in peace, Carwood Lipton. Your contributions to your nation and the ideals you embodied continue to shine for anyone seeking courage in the face of adversity.